Loretta Brойнинг. These are my books, and I'm so pleased that you readers have written so many questions for me, and I'm going to answer a few of them now. So, the first one that I'm going to answer is, many people feel happiness from unpleasant things, alcohol, pain, humiliation, etc. Tell me, what are the most amazing things in your practice that caused emotions of happiness? Well, this is a very important question. First, we have the unhealthy habits that make people happy, and then we have the illusion or expectation of having great joy in some other way. So my answer is somewhere in the middle. If we look for some fabulous ecstasy, then we're probably not going to find it, and then we're going to cling to those old bad habits. So it's better to have realistic expectations, and that allows you to let go of the unhealthy habits that made you happy and design a new happy habit. So many people could say, well, what new happy habit can I design that doesn't have calories, that's not mean to anyone, that's not unhealthy in the long run? So here are some examples. So the first thing is, people really just want free time, but we never give ourselves free time. So one happy habit is to reward yourself with free time. Now you may think you don't have time, but 5 minutes. So every time you want to do something that's not good for you, instead give yourself 5 minutes of free time to do something fun, like read a novel, do nothing, watch something that's not intellectual. Just do something that's mindless but you like for 5 or 10 minutes. Not all the time, but just when you're in that mood for something bad for you, to give yourself an alternative. The next way to be happy in this in-between place is what I call fixing a mess. So instead of expecting either ecstasy or overexcitement or overstimulation, what really makes your brain happy is to fix a problem. So one example of a problem is if you have a pile of mess in your home and every time you open a drawer, everything falls out. You can get pleasure in fixing that. Now, it's not like a party, not all at once, but if you spend 10 minutes a day working on that problem, then you will be so excited as you approach the solution. Another kind of fixing a mess is, let's say there's someone in your life who really bothers you, and just every time you're near that person, they just get on your nerves. So that's another example that you can fix that mess. You can't change them. You don't even have to think they're fabulous, but just maybe 5 minutes a day you can spend trying to change that relationship, and you will really give yourself a present, because then you won't have that kind of pain. So getting rid of any mess in your life. And finally, comedy. I think comedy is a great way, and that's what I personally like when I have a small moment of free time and I really want to relax. That makes me happy, that doesn't have any bad consequences in the long run. Now, another person asks, does each person have individual emotions despite the fact that neurotransmitters perform the same role in everyone's body? This is a very good question. So what my books explain is that in the animal world, these chemicals have a very specific job. And so in us too, they have the same specific activity. So then why would we all feel happy in a different way? And the answer is that these chemicals, you could think of them like paving on the roads of your brain. So whatever made you happy when you were young, that paved a road. Whatever made me happy when I was young, that paved a road. So we have different roads depending on what made us happy when we were young. The same with unhappy. Whatever hurt us when we were young, it built a road in your brain that's very efficient now, and all the traffic wants to zoom down that road, and we have the power to build new roads, but it's so hard, and we're not aware of our old roads. So that's why we each rely on the unique roads that we each built from our unique experience with the same materials. Another reader writes, what happened to you when you sorted out the hormones of happiness? Did you become happier, or did you want to learn something else? So here's sort of two different questions. So I'll answer both. So no matter how happy you are, you always want something else, because that's how our brain's designed to work. But yes, it was a huge relief for me to understand these chemicals. So it's not that I'm saying my life is perfect and everything's easy all the time. What I'm saying is it's such a relief to know that it's not my fault, it's not the world's fault, it's not my family's fault, doesn't mean I was born in the wrong time. Nothing is wrong. We're all just using the brain we have the way it was meant to work, which is that our brain is not designed to turn on happiness all the time. It only turns it on to motivate very specific action steps to meet survival needs. Then the happy chemical turns off, then you're in neutral, and then you have to do something again to stimulate more. So there's no such thing as being effortlessly happy sitting on the couch. It's not a realistic goal, and therefore I don't have to give myself a hard time about whether or not I've created it. That was such a relief. Then also, I watch a lot of nature videos, and I learned a lot about the conflict among animals, and later I learned about the chemicals that create it. And the same thing, when I see conflict among people, when I feel conflict, it's not my fault. What a relief. It's so great to know that mammals have conflict, and to just feel pleasure in my ability to work on it one step at a time, instead of just being angry that things aren't perfect effortlessly. Okay, the next reader question. Everyone wants to be happy, but are all internally ready for this? Can any person be happy and at the same time harmless and safe for society? This is such an important question. I'm going to reword it a bit. I think we all have this feeling of, well, what if people do bad things to be happy? So what if we just have a world where everyone goes around doing whatever they want to be happy? Wouldn't that make a mess? So is everyone capable of doing things that feel good and also are not harmful to others, not to mention to themselves? Well, yes and no. The answer is yes, we're all capable of this, but if we don't learn how to do it, then because we're mammals, it's true that many people will try to make themselves happy in ways that are harmful to others. And a simple example of that is to make yourself happy by trying to put other people down, because a mammal likes to put themselves up. When I put myself up, I feel good. How can I feel important? One way is to hurt other people. It's a terrible thing, and we don't want to support that, and so that's why I'm trying to teach people ways of how you can feel important without being harmful to others. Now, if you think, yes, but everyone I know does these mean things, your job is to focus your brain on the positive. No matter how crappy anyone else is, you can make yourself miserable if you focus on it, so that should not be your focus. Just focus on what you have power over. Let's say that with your help we adjusted our body to the required hormones of happiness. How can we protect this? Just like with a diet where you want to, after you lose weight, you want to maintain it. And how can we protect ourselves from the unhappy influences of mass media, society, and even people close to us? Yes, this is a problem, which is why I wrote the second book. So it's good to read both. And I very much believe that you can focus on your own happiness without needing the people around you to be happy. Now, I'm not saying that it's not better to be around happy people, but where are these happy people? I've looked all over the world. I have not found the island of happy people, the universe of happy people, the century of happy people in the past, or the planet doesn't exist, because that's not how the mammal brain works. So we are better off taking responsibility for our own happiness and accepting the fact that not everyone else is going to get it. So we're going to have to find a way to be happy despite the unhappiness of others around us. So in my other works, I explain a lot how things work in animals, and the simple way of looking at it is a mammal wants to be in a herd because that brings protection. But a mammal also wants to trot off to greener pasture because it's much more fun to be on a nice green hill eating all the grass by yourself. So many people want both at the same time, which is not very realistic. So instead, I can be happy that I have a choice. 1 minute I can walk toward the herd and enjoy having that protection. Another minute I could walk toward greener pasture. And instead of being unhappy that I don't have both, I can just be happy that I get to choose which minute I want which option. Okay, the next question is a little bit similar, but it's such an important issue that I really wanted to raise it. How can your book affect family relationships? For example, if one spouse decides to change and have a happier life and the other doesn't, then what will be the possible effect on the couple? And if not a couple, you can think of examples within any family or work group. Yes, this is a problem. And yet, the best gift you can give anyone is to be responsible for your own happiness. So if your partner is not happy, then instead of being mad at them for being unhappy or being mad at them for making you unhappy, make yourself happy and they will learn from you. And you can teach other people in your life by taking responsibility for your own happiness. But they may not do it the way you do it. So I always use my poor husband as an example. So my husband is very good at predicting bad things that might happen. And as soon as we solve one problem, he focuses on the next bad thing that might happen. Now that's the way our brain is designed to work. So that's how things work. So if I get upset with him every time he does that, then I'll just be upset all the time, which is not good for me. So sometimes when he predicts something bad, and I just say, oh, I can think of a solution, and then we have a solution, and I'm happy, and then I'm waiting for him to say, oh, good for you, you solved it. But he doesn't say that because he's thinking of the next problem. However, I have to say that sometimes he's right. So I focus on the positive, and I tell myself, isn't it nice that I have someone to warn me of possible problems? And when I point out a solution, he goes with me. So that's good. I don't have to have him agreeing with me all the time just to be having enough freedom to choose a happy path and to have someone that's sort of walking the path with me. That's enough. So I don't have to find fault in him. I don't have to take inventory for everyone around me on how they could be happier. I don't need to wait for them to be happy for me to be happy. So I'm much better off focusing on myself. And if you think that's selfish, remember that the best thing you can do for other people is to be happy, to set a model, and also to stop blaming other people for your own unhappiness. Next question. What do you think of which society or countries are the happiest people of all and why? So I spent 25 years as a college professor, and I had intimate knowledge about academic research, and I do not have a lot of confidence in research on happiness, and I do not believe in these surveys and studies about which country is happy. I think that the people who do the studies have certain biases and beliefs and expectations of what they're looking for. They have a preconceived idea of what a good society is, and then they just make that, they give extra points to that society. One thing that makes me laugh, my family was Italian, and some of these studies think Italians are happier. I don't know happy Italians. So I think everyone has illusions that there's some happy culture, happy place, happy ideal, and I don't think it's true. So I think it's pathways that each individual has to build in their brain. And I used to look. I looked and looked and looked. Where is this happy place that I can find? And then I stopped looking for it, and I don't think it's worth looking for. And finally, another reason not to trust these studies is because often they ask people, how happy are you, 1 to 5, how happy are you with this, how happy, and you've all done those studies, and you know how first you have an arbitrary answer, and also you can't really put it into a number. You try to tell people what they want to hear, and most often, in some cultures, it's acceptable to say you're happy, and it's not acceptable to say you're unhappy. In other cultures, if you say you're unhappy, it's sort of prestigious. It makes you sound intelligent and sophisticated, and no one wants to say they're happy because then it sounds egotistical. So there are different beliefs about self-reporting unhappiness, and I don't think self-reporting is a very good indicator. Is it true that the brain blocks children's unpleasant bad memories? This is a very important issue to understand. So we have a verbal brain and an emotional brain. One way of saying it more biologically is we have the human cortex, which is what you're used to seeing in a brain image, and then if you've seen, like, there's a core on the inside which is called the limbic system, and I call it the mammal brain because it's the same in all mammals. And the mammal brain is what controls the happy and unhappy chemicals. The verbal cortex only controls the words and the interpretation of, like, the filtering of which information we take in, that we feed to our mammal brain to decide what is good for us and what is bad for us. And for children, their cortex is not as developed, so they're closer to, let's say, the animal state. And what happens is, when a child has a very good experience or a very bad experience, these chemicals are triggered, and I said they're like paving on the road, and that builds a road in the child's brain. So that wires a child to feel good in the future any way that made you feel good before, and to feel bad in the future any way that made you feel bad before. And that's why we don't remember things in words. We don't have to remember the details of the experience, but we're totally wired to respond to the world in ways that fit our old circuits. So a famous example would be when you were young, some people, their father took them to sports, and so they have a positive association with sports. If your mother cooked with you and you had a good time, you have a positive association with cooking. Other people, when they were young, they had maybe mean, bully conflict in sports, or angry kitchen memories with cooking. So every brain connects an experience, so when you look at sports or cooking, it triggers electricity in the circuits you have built by your own chemicals. Now you can build new circuits, which is very hard, and that's the subject of my books, but the basic circuits you have are built from your early experiences, whether or not you actually remember the experience in any pictures or words. There's still real connections between your neurons. Okay, is it possible that the feeling of happiness is declining because of the regular impact of hormones of happiness? Now this is very important to know. What this question is really saying, they're not talking about history. They're talking about, in one person, if you regularly have the same pleasure, does the pleasure decline? And the answer is yes. And it's very important to understand this, because when you first get something new and it makes you happy, and then after a while it doesn't make you happy anymore, and if it's, let's say if it's your partner, and then you blame your partner. If it's your job and you blame your job. So there's a simpler way to think about it. Let's say I'm dying of thirst and I'm looking for water. Imagine an animal can't find water and all you care about is finding water. But today, I have water everywhere and it doesn't make me happy. So something only makes you happy if it meets an unmet need. As soon as your need is met, it doesn't make you happy anymore. And even another simple example is, if you want to have an ice cream and you start thinking, oh, tomorrow I'm going to buy myself an ice cream, and you can't wait, you wake up, you're thinking about that ice cream, you're driving to the ice cream store, you can't wait, you're waiting online, and you have that first lick and it's so good, but as you know, after a few minutes, you're still eating the ice cream and you're hardly even noticing it. You're thinking about what you're going to do next, and you even forget that you're eating the ice cream. So anything that's a reward, your brain gets used to it in a short time, and then you don't notice it. And that's how our brain is designed to motivate us from the early times when people had to look for food all the time. They looked for food, they digested the food, and then they had to look for food again. So you're hungry, you're not hungry. You're hungry, you're not. So the chemicals turn on and off to keep motivating you to look for food. That's the job our brain evolved to do, and that's why we have ups and downs despite our good intentions. So young children are always happy when they have what they need, so why are we adults constantly searching for more? Well, now I think you could probably all answer that. So I think young children are not necessarily happy all the time. Maybe we project that onto them, we idealize that. Children maybe don't worry about the future because that part of your brain that anticipates the future is not yet developed. But children are not always happy. You may remember the happy moments of your childhood, but adults are always searching for something because a mature brain anticipates threats. So in the past, you ran out of food, you had to anticipate running out of food and get more food. Today, it's easier to get food, but you can anticipate running out of money, anticipate losing your job, anticipate what's going to happen when you're old. So this is how your brain is designed to work. We're always anticipating the future. Now, we can drive ourselves crazy, so we need to train to build a new circuit to say, I've done enough, I'm going to take a rest, I'm going to have fun right now, and tomorrow I can worry more about the future. So we need to balance those two, and that's a learned skill. It's not a disease if you don't have it, it's not something's wrong with you, and the people who do have it, they didn't get lucky, it's a skill that they learn, and you can learn it too.